Intermittent fasting has been one of the most widely discussed dietary strategies of the past decade. It has been promoted across social media, fitness communities, and health publications as a method that does more than simply reduce calories, offering benefits like enhanced fat metabolism, improved insulin sensitivity, better blood sugar regulation, and sustainable weight loss. The appeal is understandable. Intermittent fasting provides a structured framework that sidesteps the need to count calories or track macronutrients, replacing complex decisions with a simpler rule: eat during this window, fast during that one. But a major systematic review published in the Cochrane database has now examined the actual evidence behind these claims, and the findings are considerably more modest than the hype surrounding intermittent fasting would suggest. What the research examined. The review was a systematic analysis of 22 randomized controlled trials involving a combined 1,195 participants across the United States, Australia, China, Germany, and several other countries. Randomized controlled trials represent the gold standard in clinical research, making this review one of the most rigorous assessments of intermittent fasting's effectiveness conducted to date. The trials evaluated multiple forms of intermittent fasting, including time-restricted feeding, where eating is confined to a specific window of hours each day, and alternate day fasting, where participants alternate between days of very restricted intake and normal eating. These intermittent fasting approaches were compared against 3 different control conditions: receiving standard dietary advice, receiving no intervention at all, and being placed on a wait list to eventually begin intermittent fasting. The minimum trial duration was 4 weeks, with follow-up periods extending to at least 6 months. Key outcomes tracked included weight loss, body weight reduction of at least 5%, quality of life, and adverse events. The most significant finding from the review is also the most counterintuitive, given intermittent fasting's widespread promotion. When compared directly to standard dietary advice, intermittent fasting showed little to no meaningful difference in weight loss outcomes. People following intermittent fasting protocols did not lose significantly more weight than people following conventional, calorie-restricted dietary guidance. The picture was slightly more favorable when comparing intermittent fasting to doing nothing at all. In that comparison, intermittent fasting likely produced somewhat greater weight loss than no intervention. This is not a surprising finding, since nearly any structured dietary approach tends to produce better results than no approach. But it does confirm that intermittent fasting is not without effect. The important distinction is between absolute effectiveness and comparative effectiveness. Intermittent fasting can help people lose weight. The question of whether it helps people lose more weight than other strategies with equivalent adherence, the question that actually matters for choosing between approaches, is answered by this research with a clear finding: it does not appear to have a meaningful advantage. Significant gaps in the evidence. The review also identified substantial gaps in the existing research that limit how much can be concluded about intermittent fasting's long-term value. None of the 22 included studies reported on participant satisfaction with the approach, which matters considerably for assessing whether any dietary strategy is genuinely sustainable in real life. None reported on diabetes outcomes or overall comorbidities, which is a meaningful gap, given that intermittent fasting is frequently promoted specifically for metabolic benefits, including blood sugar and insulin management. The certainty of the evidence was consistently rated as low to very low due to methodological limitations, including small sample sizes, inconsistent outcome reporting, and high risk of bias in many studies. Most studies focused on relatively short timeframes, with follow-ups capped at 12 months, leaving the question of long-term sustainability and health impact largely unanswered. The study populations were also predominantly from high-income countries, raising questions about how well these findings generalize to different demographics, income levels, food environments, and cultural contexts, where intermittent fasting may function quite differently in practice. What this means for people considering intermittent fasting. The honest takeaway from this research is not that intermittent fasting is ineffective or should be avoided. It is that intermittent fasting does not appear to be meaningfully superior to other structured dietary approaches for weight loss, which fundamentally changes how it should be positioned in conversations about weight management. For people who find the structure of eating within a defined window genuinely helpful for managing their overall intake, intermittent fasting may serve as a useful tool. Some people find that a clear boundary around eating times reduces decision fatigue and makes it easier to maintain consistency. For those individuals, the approach may work well, precisely because it fits their lifestyle and preferences. For others, intermittent fasting creates practical problems. Work schedules, social commitments, family meals, and medical conditions can all make strict eating windows difficult or inappropriate to maintain. People with a history of disordered eating may find that fasting periods create patterns of restriction that are psychologically harmful. Athletes and people with high physical activity demands may find that fasting windows interfere with performance and recovery. People managing certain health conditions, particularly those on medications that require food, should not attempt intermittent fasting without medical supervision. The broader research on weight management consistently points to the same conclusion that this review reinforces. Adherence matters more than the specific approach. A dietary strategy that a person can follow consistently, that fits their life, that they do not experience as punishing, and that supports adequate nutrition is more valuable than a theoretically superior strategy that proves too difficult to maintain. There is no universally optimal weight loss method, and the proliferation of intermittent fasting as though it were a discovery that changes the fundamental rules of metabolism was always overstated. What works is eating in a way that creates an appropriate balance between intake and expenditure, that provides adequate protein, fiber, and micronutrients, and that can be sustained over months and years rather than weeks. Whether that eating pattern includes a defined fasting window is a matter of individual preference, practical feasibility, and medical appropriateness, not a matter of one approach being categorically superior to another. For anyone navigating weight management decisions, working with a registered dietitian who can assess individual needs, lifestyle factors, and health history provides far more useful guidance than any single dietary framework can offer on its own.